Yes, this is John from All Points TV, and today we have sitting here in the studio with us is Eric Roebuck. He's running for the Flint City Council, 9th Ward, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, as people can see, you're pretty young. I mean, most of the people holding office now are definitely your elders. So we'll go into that. But you've lived around Flint for some time, right?
Yeah, I've been living here for a few years now. I really like Flint.
And you're willing to take these challenges, to use that term, the challenges of trying to change, make this place a better place, more livable place. From your, let's see, we'll go into your educational background. You're studying at the University of Michigan?
Yeah, I'm going to University of Michigan, Flint. I'm studying economics currently.
And that's a good thing to have. I mean, I just wish your predecessors, if you do get elected, would have had some kind of background like that or had a better understanding of that. But anyway, the 9th Ward, I'll put the map up here and we'll talk about the parameters of that. And, it's like, I see Hemp Hill Road is like one of the boundary lines, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And it juts down a little bit to would be the south of that, or?
To
the south of that.
Yeah.
And that's like the area Broach and Burton and Grand Blanc area, isn't it?
Yes, that is, yeah.
Yeah, because my family had a restaurant on the corner of Bristol and Dort for years, which was actually in Burton, so you're talking a little ways away from, that line's cut off a little bit away from that, where that intersection was at. But anyway, we got that up. Now, the 9th Ward is, like, I was looking for the map, and it came up the 9th Ward actually 2 years ago. It's considered one of the more violent sections of Flint. Do you currently live in the 9th Ward? Or?
Yes, I currently live in the 9th Ward. I live over on Campbell Street, right next to Atherton Road, towards the, right towards the boundary line. One of the cool things I would say about the 9th Ward, I've seen, a little bit of change in the recent years just in the area, but, one of the things that's still, really lacking is it seems like on every election cycle is when things start to get done because they realize, that's the point when it has to get done so they get reelected. Just like, a perfect example, we have McKinley Middle School that's, they're starting to get torn down, but it's been abandoned for years now. And that's just now happening when that should have been done, I don't know, probably 3 years ago. It's just like a hazard for, kids that are going around playing around it, the homeless trying to get in and break in, and just a lot of like issues that come along with like the whole like broken window theory in abandoned buildings. And on top of that, we're not just talking about like McKinley Middle School, but we're also talking about, the abandoned homes that are on each individual street. When I step out onto my front porch, I look to my right, I have 2 abandoned homes right there that had caught on fire. And one of them, I had to call the fire department because someone tried lighting it on fire again. And it's really unfortunate because not only do you have these homes that are, just abandoned and not taken care of and a hazard, but it affects everyone else in the area, with home values, and realistically that also affects, the city, with revenue, what they tax in property taxes. If your home is less valuable because of these abandoned homes, they can't tax as much, so revenue decreases from the city. And on top of that, you also have people that just don't want to move into Flint.
Yeah, and it's like we've lost so much of our population. You're probably aware of the numbers of, since the 80s, it's probably 35, 40, 45,000, 50,000 people. That's a considerable amount of people.
In 1973, I think there was almost 200,000, and recently, 2 years ago, we hit under 100,000, which is a crazy number to think about. Within just like 40 years, you're talking about 50% of the population just suddenly gone.
Yeah. Well, it's understandable. The chief source of employment in the area, General Motors, largely pulled out here. I mean, there's some remnants of the factories, like especially on the. Well, actually, would be part of the area where the 9th Ward is at. The I think it's Bristol and Van Slyke area.
Yeah,
that's a part of that would be part of your ward, I believe. If that is Flint, because see, so we got weird cutouts. You got little area going here, and that's Burton. You go this way, it's some other municipality. So it's kind of really oddly carved up. I think that probably reflects other. If you go to Detroit, it's also the same thing. The suburbs, yeah. So anyway, so what would you like to see what would your attack be on to approach this? So
I recently wrote on a house price capitalization, and it's essentially how to make homes more or less valuable. And one of the biggest things for making homes more valuable was the public goods in the area. And when I'm talking about public goods, it can be as simple as a sidewalk, a street light, a street light that actually works. It could be good infrastructure and roads. It could be a small park. It can be a big park. And these are things that are really important for an area that really affects the value of homes. So, when we're tearing down all these homes, all these land, like these pieces of land are going to the Genesee Land Bank. But the problem is when they go to the Genesee Land Bank, they're not maintained. And even so, I've seen homes that, especially on the east side, that were like 3 years ago, probably still livable, but, after 3 years of just, being broken into, being caught on fire, you're talking about homes that you could have housed a family. Now it has to be torn down because it's just a mess. And with those land areas, when they do tear down the home, it just turns into like an overgrown area. And I'd really love to see is like communities coming together. There's a homeowners like group in my neighborhood, and they're about all the crime and stuff like that. But I'm sure talking to them, they're interested in creating groups to take care of these areas. And with that, if you give them a couple of sections of houses that were torn down that are side by side, you could easily create a community garden, small playground. It could be as simple as putting a couple picnic tables and putting in a couple grills, and that brings value to the city because it shows that there's something to do, there's places to go, and it's not just abandoned homes or empty lots of just nothingness.
Yeah, so you say I asked that one question. You obviously been thinking about it. You could answer that question pretty sufficiently, I would say. But I know that Flint's known for a lot of, and I'm very cynical. There's a lot of people who start stuff and never seem to go anywhere with it. They do get grant money.
Yes.
If you're if you do get elected to city council, would you see yourself trying to encourage people to properly spend this money, or would you have any oversight of that? Could you have any oversight in something like that, you think, or what?
Yeah, see, one of the biggest things for me is I recently went and talked to a couple of firefighters in Flint, and one of the biggest issues that they're talking about is lack of equipment that they have. And the problem is we don't have the money in Flint realistically, which I do understand. But instead of looking for grants, we don't have enough people pushing for 50-50 grants or just grant writers to be able to get these amazing grants that are available to us. We just kind of we'll figure it out, and then we end up having this $6 million deficit in the city, and it's really unrealistic to be able to sustain that. And with that $6 million deficit, we're not even hitting everything we need. Yeah.
Okay, so you can tell you've been thinking about this. That's encouraging.
No, it's really important to me.
See, I'm very cynical about the people going into office locally for the past few years because I just don't. It's America's supposed to be this great place because anybody can enter political, and we don't want to discourage that. But it doesn't necessarily translate to everybody who wants to or thinks they should, and in fact should be in politics. They don't have the experience, a skill set that's appropriate or even useful. They don't, and another thing is too. Cronyism, backdoor deals. It's pretty rampant in Genesee County. It's not. If I'm shocking somebody, I'm sorry. It's not a great place. It's not a great place to look for if you're looking for stellar performance on elected officials. That's all I can say that way. I'll be very polite in saying that way.
Yeah, no. I would definitely have to agree. If you I recently looked up, just to find the, a solid number, and I was surprised, you're talking about the education that is available within the city of Flint. Within the last decade, you're talking about 16 schools that have shut down, which is a huge amount, whether it be elementaries. We've had a couple of high schools we shut down, and people will say it's in part to school choice. But you can't blame the parents for wanting to take their school or their kids to a different school for that better education. In the 50s and 60s, Flint used to be the standard in education. They had a great education system, and a lot of models of how schools work now are based off of how Flint was. But the problem is we've kind of just let it go. And it's really unfortunate because I really care about Flint and I want to see it thriving, but education is one of those big points. And it kind of ties in with my other thing. When you have these abandoned homes and stuff like this, and property values get lower and lower, it kind of brings in this issue, and it really does affect education, because you're talking about the amount of money that can go to education. And so now you see them going to Flushing or Grand Blanc, and then they're not staying in the local area.
Yeah. Another thing is too, it's like you're in University of Michigan, and if you have a lot of people are now there from foreign countries. They have a lot of foreign students, I guess.
Yes, they
since
do.
I left U of M there, but I can see that with on-campus housing, because I remember when I was working there, we couldn't refer to it as dorms. We're supposed to call it on-campus housing. Okay, but anyway, that's a little distinction they made there. But if you see the bulk of the people coming and going from there, if you talk to them, most of them are from other countries. So basically, though, you have the situation set up with Kettering's got the same thing. We're training our children, kids, teenagers, people your age, going out as soon as they get out of college. Likelihood of them finding something useful and employable here is slim, so they go God knows where. God only knows where they have to go. And that's basically, it's your people are your best resource. So they put a lot of time and effort into educating them, and these institutions here to do that. And now we're not going to reap any benefit from that. That seems kind of maddening.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to agree. I like to think call it like the brain trust. Had like the young generation that are graduating college and stuff like that. These are the people that are gonna, get those like high like education jobs. Which and the problem is like they're realistically, majority of them aren't going to stay here. Whether they go back to, if they are foreign, they go back to their country and, continue their professional career there. But if you talk about the people in the local area, we're talking about them moving down to Troy or Royal Oak or something like that, because that's where all the jobs are. I do think there are a couple of really great companies out there, like Diplomat, that's, emerged recently in the last decade. They employ like 1,700 people, which is really awesome. But that's one company, and we need to push more for companies to come to Flint. We need the incentives for that to happen, because realistically, as it stands now, companies don't want to move here, and it's really unfortunate. Like, I care about the city and I want it to flourish, but it's hard for, I know I want to stay here, but it's hard for other people that maybe aren't in that love with the city, but to have a job, because that's what's going to keep them around, and they're just not here.
That's a film I was going to say. Basically, my parents told me, and also the classes I took, basically boils down to this: if they got employed, people can get employed. They're going to stay there, because let's face it. And another thing is, if you can keep employed within a few miles of where they live, instead of having to go all the way down 60, 80 miles away for a job, and the 60, 80 miles per day back again, 160 miles a day roughly, or 120 miles. That's a real big boom, because now that economy's in the local economy, they're getting taxed at city taxes. Plus, they're spending the money here. If they're a store, then the stores are really, a lot of them they have left. We have very few stores in this city of Flint left. What would you like to see? What would you like to see? Did you like to see this concept through of basically the economic recovery of Flint upon the institution of higher education, like some people are toting? Do you like to see something like that built on that?
I think that's a good starting point. I do believe that education is really a high key, because it gets people here. Because if you go to someone and talk to them about Flint, and they're not from the area and they don't go to school here, they're going to be like, oh, that's Flint. And they're going to be like, oh, isn't that bad? And then, it doesn't matter what you're going to tell them. You're not going to convince them. You might convince maybe a few, but people aren't going to be able to see how much change Flint has had unless they're coming here to college. And, just in the, the last few years, you've seen great things happen. You're talking about the farmers market. You're talking about a lot of these restaurants coming downtown. You're talking about Uptown doing a lot. That new project that Uptown's doing with all the the housing where the old Y was. That's really great, and I think that's really good in getting people back. But I think you have to prop it up on the education, because people aren't going to be able to see that unless they're here.
Right. Another thing is too, it's I could see it's never going to be in Ann Arbor, in my opinion, because Ann Arbor kind of grew up together with U of M, University of Michigan down there. But this is going to certainly be a retrofit. It's certainly going to have some resistance, and there's going to be and also basically you are combating negative images from people they're looking for places to send their children. The U of M Flint does have some programs that are not offered in any other part of the U of M system. University of Michigan system, Dearborn, they're only found in Flint. They're not found in Ann Arbor. They're found just in Flint, like the physical therapy program, for example, when I was there, that used to be a big draw.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few people that I've seen come from, all the way in California, from Florida, from Maine to Washington, Texas, all of them trying to get into this physical therapy program that is like renowned for being really good. And Flint has that. And if you were to talk to someone maybe in, I don't know, Royal Oak, and you were to tell them that wasn't their field, to be like, they would never expect that. And on top of that, I think Flint is also bringing in this nursing program that is also renowned for being really great, because we have these two great hospitals in the area, and it's giving them the opportunity. You're also talking about MSU that has a med school here now. There's some really cool things going on, but people aren't expecting it unless they're here to see it.
Another thing is too, it's like, unfortunately, that's a very sad occasion when somebody, if they're brought here for medical conditions or something like that, or they're experimental stages of something and they're part of that study group. Let's face it, they're not going to look around for them. They want amenities, but a lot of them are not going to simply be here because right at the current state. And so it's kind of like a catch-22 scenario. It'd be nice to have them here already, but we can't afford to build them here. But we'd be great to have them here because they'd get more people be aware of them. They could depend on if they had to come here. So I mean, it's a kind of a catch-22 scenario. So you study economics, and did you have an interest in this when you were like in high school, economics, or?
Yeah, so when I was really young, every summer I used to like pick up a subject and read a little bit about it. And when I was 12 years old, during that summer, I found a couple books on economics at the library, and I really enjoyed it, and I kind of just stuck with it, kept learning more and more and more about it. And then when I came to college time, I was like, this is for me. There's nothing else I want to do. I mean, obviously, I'm still planning on going to law school after this, but economics as it stands, that was going to be my undergrad. That's what I wanted to do. There was not a single point so far in my college career where I was like, I want to switch.
I can see it. So many people who are going to law when their pre-law days are spent in political science.
Yeah.
So many of them. I mean, especially if you look at the ones that are leading this country now. And see, I think a person have a better grounding in economics. And I would also say even some business. Donald Trump, everybody wants to applaud him for being such a great business person. That's questionable. But anyway, at least he knows the experience, what it is to make million dollar deals. And that's, I think it's really lacking. There seems almost to be a resentment from politicians towards business people. And yet they have to get in with the voters, they have to be able to show some kind of ability to have job creation. Yet there seems to be a hostility towards those who are job creators.
And I find it really, there's a lot of irony in that, because if you look at people who score the highest on the LSATs, you have your philosophy, your actuary, math, and the third is economics. When you talk about political science, you're going all the way down to 24, 25, and you're talking about politics, but when you get into it, your whole thing is about, what's best for the economy, what's best for the country. And a lot of these people, they just don't have the experience with the economic side. And they really struggle to know what's important. And I think that it's shown very clearly in Flint. We're so focused on a lot of other issues that we're unable to see what needs to be done on the economic side, to bring up those property values, to increase revenue in the city, to be able to have a lot of these, like you're talking about, amenities, and just these public goods that should become they're necessities that we just don't have.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think having a background in economics is going to be kind of a fresh perspective for a city council member, because typically, growing up, most of the people I knew were retired factory workers or current factory workers. They also had worked with the unions, and they went into politics that way. And you're seeing the same thing. The approach has always been the same way. It seems to be the same. We're doing the same thing over and over again, and then kind of we're getting frustrated because we're not getting different results. And that's probably a good working definition for insanity. I mean, if you want a different effect, impact, you change your approach to things. But no, We don't see an abandoned, tried and failed, measures.
Last 30 years. It's the same thing over and over, and it's not changing, unfortunately.
Yeah, so they pinned their hopes on one or two big projects like Waterworld back then. It was like, this is going to, and anybody could actually went through it a couple times. I couldn't see that being a major draw for any sustainable period for outsiders. I mean, the word would get out, as it did, But anyway, we're going to kind of wrap this up. But anyway, August 8th is going to be your primary, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And you have how many people, including the incumbent of and who is the incumbent of?
It's Scott Kincaid.
He's been there for, a long
He's been
time.
there since 1985, so 32 years.
Yeah, so, and there's how many people, besides all of you together, how many are running for this?
There's three of us. There's Scott Kincaid, me, and Eva Worthing.
Okay, so anyway, would you want to give out contact information, how they can contact you?
Yeah, so right now, currently, I have a Facebook page, and it's Committee to Elect Eric Roebuck. You can also, if you go to that page, it has all of my information to be able to contact me.
Okay, and I'll also put that, I'll have you write it out, and then I'll put it on a tag for, when they go to the YouTube video where this is going up. And also, I'd encourage you, I'm posting this on your YouTube, on your Facebook page, as well as my All Points Facebook page. And then you could take it and post it wherever you choose to, okay?
All right, sounds perfect.
And thank you very much for coming in. And people, August 8th, remember Eric Roebuck, and I'll also will extend the invitation to come in to the other candidates as well. So,
Yeah.
and so to show, the show that we're open to, just want to get the people familiar with who's running. So
yeah, I'd love, that them to have the same chance. I want people to vote who they truly believe is going to be the best candidate. And if they don't know all the information, it's hard for them to be able to do that. So if they were able to come in and do the same thing, that would be really awesome.
Well, thank you very much and for your time, and I really appreciate you coming.
No,
on.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.